So let's talk about Wandavision episode 7. After this episode, we got 2 left, and then the series will come to an end, and then we'll have a break, and then the Winter Soldier Falcon show will begin on Disney Plus. So, this episode was a parody of, when it comes to sitcoms, 2 shows that I picked up on, Modern Family and The Office. And, you know, when it comes to those shows, I've never actually seen the entire run to those shows. I've seen some episodes, some clips here and there. So some of the concepts I do appreciate, but I'm not like super familiar with those shows. So already early, like kind of going into this, I was kind of like hoping I'd be able to get the jokes. But I do understand how those shows are structured, and this show kind of went with that. You know, the whole talking into the camera thing, like a reality show. You know, it was all kept here for WandaVision episode 7. I mean, the thing is with those shows, it's not that I don't like them or anything like that. I mean, I love Ed O'Neill, and I like what I saw from Modern Family, but by the time those episodes or those shows aired, I was already, like, not really watching too much TV at that point in my life, except for sports and things like that, so I didn't get to see them, like, you know, start to finish like some of you guys probably did. But, first of all, Wanda looked hot as hell. I love the way she was dressed in this episode. She looked great. Her hair was great. They have an early gag in the episode with cereal called Sugar Snaps. Get it? And then there's the early... So there's a few big reveals in this episode. There's a few interesting things that happen. Very interesting if you ask me. So first of all, she tells her kids that Uncle P is not your uncle. Right? Talking about the X-Men version of Quicksilver, which is true. He's not the original Quicksilver. And he pops up at the very end of the episode in the mid-credit scene. Snooper's gonna snoop. Well, anyways, the story here was that Wanda was losing her magic abilities more and more as the episodes kept going on. It was almost like, you know, she was losing her ability to control the hex. You know, at one point, her television set and her furniture starts changing back to previous furnitures from previous episodes. The special effects were totally bonkers in this episode. I gotta give the MCU credit because they really did some really beautiful looking effects that looked very authentic, and it looked really good. Really, really good. Even for somebody like me who has a trained eye when it comes to like CGI and HD. It was CGI, but it was very well done. So things began to revert, like I said, and while that's going on, we find out in the real world or whatever that Hayward was trying to bring Vision back, maybe use him as a weapon or whatever, and because of that, we find out that Monica wants to get back into the Hex to, you know, get a hold of Wanda and explain to her that, you know, Vision's the key. So, Vision is awake inside the Hex. He actually knows what's going on now, and Darcy is too, and they have to kind of pretend like they're part of that world. Vision actually meets Darcy and she remembers, and there's a point where they're driving and, you know, she actually tells Vision about his past that he forgot. You know, what happened in Infinity War and even what happened in Age of Ultron. So things are falling apart, right? All over the place. And Monica, there's a scene where Monica tries to get into the Hex and she creates this big suit. And this suit was like, well, she doesn't create it, but Sword gives her a big suit so she can get inside the Hex and not be affected by the spell of Wanda. And they go with the Elon Musk space rover thing, but it gets blocked and kicked out, and it's too dense, basically, like the force field, so it doesn't work. However, when it gets spit back out, half of it looks like a truck from like the 2000s, and the other half looks like the futuristic rover, so I thought that was kind of cool. Monica instead runs right through the damn Hex, like physically, she just runs right through it. And man, it was freaking cool. The effects here are just crazy. We're seeing like images of like Monica and her previous incarnations inside the Hex. We're seeing like this sort of pinkish background of her trying to like maneuver through the code, if you can call it that, through the Matrix. And when she comes out, her eyes turn white and she has a superhero pose. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Photon. She's now becoming Photon. Now here's what I don't know. What I don't know is, has Monica always had these powers? Like since before this series began? Or did she get the powers when she went through the Hex? Did the Hex change her molecularly to give her the powers? We don't know yet. If some of y'all have an answer for me, let me know. But I know in the comics she always got the powers from, differently. But Here, I'm wondering if Wanda's powers gave her the power. Probably not, but you never know. You never know. But that was kept a secret for a long time, that she had these powers, if that's the case. So Photon tries to go in and tell Wanda what's going on. Wanda picks her up and drops her and just, it's about to be a fight right here. And then she calls herself the villain, interestingly enough. And then it's a good confrontation. And then all of a sudden Agnes shows up. And I'm like, okay, is she the villain here? And it turns out that yes. Those of us who prognosticated that Agnes was actually Agatha are correct. That is indeed the case. It gets revealed in a really cool way. Wanda goes downstairs and she's wondering where the kids are at because Agnes seems to want those kids, right? It's very creepy. And she's going downstairs because Agnes is like, oh, they must be in the basement. It's like, why would kids be in the basement? She's going downstairs and suddenly it begins to transform into this like dungeon. Like this creepy, dark dungeon, very, very creepy scene. If this is how Doctor Strange 2 is going to be, I'm very excited. And Agnes is down there and she says, you're not the only one that knows magic. And she does get revealed indeed as Agatha Harkness. And they have this funny ass thing where it's like, it was Agatha all along. This musical that goes back to like the previous like episodes of her being Agnes. And, for those who don't know Agatha Harkness, she's basically a magic-based character in the Marvel Comics who at one time was actually around during the Salem witch trials. That's where they got the idea from. And she was a coven of witches. And she actually, at one point, taught Scarlet Witch how to use her powers, like at one point in the comics. I don't remember how long ago it was, but she did do that. So she does have a history with Scarlet Witch. Now, a lot of folks are saying, what about Nightmare? What about Mephisto? I think if Mephisto shows up, it'll be later. I think he'll be teased, but I don't think we're going to see him for a while. Agnes and Agatha is going to be the real sort of villain of this show, and she's been the one who's been messing with everything, according to what the show told us, that she's been the one. Now, that could also be Wanda manipulating things, or maybe Agnes herself is the one creating that little vision for us to see. But basically, it's revealed that Agatha was the one that was messing things up, and she actually killed Sparky, which to me is instant freaking heat. That is instant heat with me. And there's a confrontation at the end. And I guess it's teasing a battle between Wanda and Agatha for the next episode. We got 2 more episodes left, so I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm wondering what's going to happen when Doctor Strange pops up, because I do think we're going to see him. I do have a strong feeling that we're going to see him in this show. Maybe even the last episode or even before then. And then there's a mid-credit scene in this episode. I know a lot of folks are going to miss this, but there was a mid-credit scene where Photon, Monica, shows up and tries to open up the, go to the basement. And then Quicksilver shows up there and says, he says, snoopers be snooping. And that's the cliffhanger. So we don't know if Quicksilver is actually being created by Agatha. We don't know if Quicksilver is actually somebody else. Maybe Quicksilver is the one who's the Grim Reaper. Or maybe he's the one who's Mephisto. I don't know. We don't know yet. But without question, it doesn't seem like Quicksilver's on their side. Especially based on the fact that, Wanda herself is like, that's not your Uncle P. So it's like, okay, who is this version of Quicksilver? Is it actually one from the X-Men verse? Or is it just a vision created by one of these cosmic, dimensional magicians? We'll find out soon. Overall, this episode I thought was kind of okay. It was not the best episode. As far as the comedy went, some of it I liked, some of it kind of went over my head. Most of it I did not really enjoy. Wasn't that funny. But there was some snarky humor here and there, and it was kind of a slower episode, but I didn't hate it or anything. It's just, it's on the weaker scale. I feel like the last few weeks have been really solid. This one was a bit of a step down, but this episode was done to establish the last 2 episodes, because now that we know that Agatha is the one who's involved, or one of the ones involved, we may see a big fight on our hands to close out this show. We'll see what happens. Again, so far, I did enjoy the episode, don't get me wrong. I wasn't bored or anything, but it just wasn't as good as the previous weeks, which is saying something because it's been a really good show so far. So what do you think? What do you think about the reveal of Agnes being Agatha? Was it too easy to predict? Do you think she can actually carry this show as being the lead villain? Or is there somebody else involved, like a Mephisto or a Grim Reaper or a Nightmare? All these guys could be involved. I mean, they're all, dimensional beings, the high level ones too. So, especially Mephisto. So we don't know yet, but do you think that maybe Wanda will eventually become the hero here, or what? Where is this going to go? Let me know what you think down below. I appreciate the of you. Thank you again. Have a great day, and I cannot wait for next week to see what happens next.